Let's move on to another trap. And this is also, in a sense, very, very subtle. So let's take an example here. Let's say that it's 1939. And here we are being shown the future. We are being shown what Hitler is about to do, what he's planning to do, and we are being shown the Second World War, the Holocaust, and the whole thing. Somebody puts a button in front of us. And if we push this button, Hitler dies. The whole thing is avoided, because he's the only one who can drive it. Even though there are other fallen beings around Hitler, he is the one taking the initiative, and they wouldn't be able to carry it through, any of them. So if Hitler dies, the whole thing is avoided. So the question is, would you push that button? Would I push that button? And for me, I realized at a certain point the answer was yes, I would. I would have pushed that button. And it took me a long time to realize that that would have been a mistake. Now just think about this. Think about your reaction here. And, I look back, and again, you can take the book, My Lives, with Hitler, with Lucifer, Satan, Hitler, and Jesus, and it's explained in there how we fall into this trap of thinking we have to fight the fallen beings. And it's really like, for us as avatars, as I said, we are hunted by the fallen beings. So it's fairly easy for us to come to identify that there are some special people that are trying to destroy us personally and viciously and with complete insensitivity. But this is not really the biggest shock for us. The biggest shock is that we see that there are these people who, as I said, have total disrespect for the value of human life. And this means that we now have to deal with this. We don't have the full understanding that we have as avatars. It's very, very easy for us to take that small step down to the 47th level, where now we lose our connection. We think we have been abandoned by God or by the Ascended Masters. And we are thinking, I have to deal with this situation on my own. And then in succeeding lifetimes, we again encounter the fallen beings. They also again try to destroy us. And we see them trying to destroy other people and doing these completely illogical acts. And it's very easy for us to come to identify that the problem on Earth, the real problem on Earth that is preventing this Earth from going up, are these beings. We obviously don't call them fallen beings, but we see certain beings. And that's why we think that if we could just remove those beings, then the Earth would be a better planet. And this means that if we are in physical embodiment with these fallen beings, we're thinking, if we could just get them out of embodiment. And that's why we can very easily become pulled into starting to fight the fallen beings. And this is a trap. And when I look back, when I was young, as I've said before, I was very shocked about war. And I really had this dream sometimes that I could find some kind of a way to stop war with force. In other words, so that nobody could fight a war, because there was this invincible force that could stop the war. But it was, of course, with force. And I met other spiritual people who had similar ideas, The thing is, this is very understandable that we react this way, but it's only understandable when we're below the 48th level of consciousness. Because at the 48th level of consciousness, this seems logical. But it doesn't when we go beyond, especially when we go higher towards the 96th level of consciousness and beyond. Then we see how illogical it is. But at the 48th level and below, at the 47th and below, it seems logical that if you can just remove the people who are the cause of evil, you will have removed evil. The problem with this line of reasoning is, what is really the problem on earth? The problem on earth is not specific fallen beings, whether they're in embodiment or out of embodiment. It's really not the fallen beings that's the problem. The problem, if you want to say there's a problem, which you can always debate, but let's go with it for now, the problem is the duality consciousness, the dualistic consciousness. And because it is this consciousness that allows beings to go into the illusion of separation. And it's the illusion of separation that causes the murder and mayhem on earth. Because that's when you begin to experience that I'm not connected to these other people. And this is sort of a little bit subtle to grasp, because I've said that human beings couldn't do something, they couldn't start something like the Holocaust, because they don't have enough insensitivity to life. And of course you could say a human being, one of the original inhabitants, can also go towards the lowest level of consciousness possible on Earth. Most people don't go so low, but they could, theoretically. And of course, the lower you go towards the basic level, the less sensitivity you have to life. But still, there is a difference between having zero sensitivity to life and having some sensitivity, because most people, they have a certain sensitivity. In other words, I grew up in Denmark, which is a peaceful country where there isn't the kind of conflicts you see in many other countries, but the whole idea, all of the people around me, all of the people I met in my childhood, the whole idea that they could kill another human being was just unthinkable for them. And that's because they had a certain sensitivity to life. This didn't mean that sometimes they could be insensitive to other people and be cruel to other people, but there was a limit. There was a certain border they wouldn't go beyond. And so what most people are in, as a result of their duality consciousness, is not the total sensitivity of the fallen beings. They are in this focus on themselves, where they are thinking, I want to have something in my life, but I can't because of these other people. In other words, people are projecting, because this is what you do when you go below the 48th level, you start projecting. The problem is out there. You're no longer looking at yourself and saying, what can I do? How can I change myself? You're looking at the problem is out there. And now they start identifying that the problem is outside themselves, means these other people have to change in order for us to get the kind of country we want. To use the example again of Germany, in order for us to have an affluent society, for Germans to be affluent, we have to get the Jews out of here. They are the problem. This, by the way, couldn't have happened in Denmark when I was growing up, because the population had gone beyond that level. But anyway, what I'm saying is that people can be pulled into this state of mind that says the ends can justify the means. In other words, we know that we shouldn't force other people. But here's a problem that's so severe that it has to be solved. And the only way to solve it is to force these other people. So therefore, we are willing to force them. This, of course, this entire mentality that the ends can justify the means, that is what the fallen beings have taken to an extreme. But human beings, the original inhabitants of the earth, can go into it in milder ways. And that's why once people have gone into this, then the fallen beings can really start manipulating them. You see how the basic psychology is, there's a problem, but it's a problem outside of myself. I can't solve the problem by changing myself. It can only be solved by changing these other people, but they are not willing to change voluntarily, so therefore they have to be forced for the greater good of solving the problem. Because if we don't solve the problem, and this is when we go one step further from just this mentality, we go into what I call the epic mindset. If we don't solve the problem, some calamity is going to happen. Go back to the Crusades, where the Christian crusaders who went down there to kill men, women, and children in the Muslim villages, they believed that the Muslims, because they were in a false religion, they would suffer for all eternity in hell. And therefore it was better for them to be killed than to live the rest of their lives as Muslims. And you see numerous examples of this around the world, where you have this epic mindset, some huge calamity is going to happen unless we solve this problem, and the only way to solve the problem is to force or kill these other people. So again, human beings can be pulled into this mindset, but they wouldn't start it themselves. It's the fallen beings that pull them into this extreme. So how does that relate to avatars? Well, again, when we go below the 48th level of consciousness, we go into this state of mind ourselves. We start seeing that there's a problem on Earth. It's affecting me. I want to overcome it. It's affecting other people. I don't want these people to suffer. You still have some sense that you're here to help people overcome suffering. There shouldn't be suffering on Earth. And then you identify, but the suffering is caused by these specific people who are forcing people, who are manipulating people, fooling people, killing people. So if I could just kill these people, we would solve the problem. In other words, you as an avatar, you go into the ends can justify the means. And then you start fighting the fallen beings. But what did I start out by saying with this long? The real problem on Earth is not the fallen beings, it's the duality consciousness. Because in the duality consciousness, you can justify anything. So you can have, Christian crusaders. They believe they are good Christians. What did Jesus say? Turn the other cheek, love your enemies, do good to those that hate you, forgive 70 times 7. I have read the New Testament. I don't see anywhere in there where he says, and take up your sword and cut the heads off all those that don't believe in me. I don't see it in there. Maybe it was left out or mistranslated. I don't know. But I just don't see it. And so these Christians, they actually believe that what they are doing is justified by Jesus. I received this vision of, here you have in the Middle Ages during the Inquisition, where the Christian priests are torturing people. They're literally torturing people. And after a long day in the torture chamber, a priest goes into the church and he kneels before the crucified Christ and he looks up at Jesus and he thinks that Jesus looks back with approval and saying, good job. You really saved some souls today. And so you can see how the duality consciousness, we can justify anything. And that particular mechanism of being able to justify violating other people, that is the problem on Earth. So when we as avatars start fighting the fallen beings, what are we doing? We're going into that same state of consciousness. We are reinforcing the duality consciousness. We are reinforcing it. Well, you can't solve a problem with the same state of consciousness that created the problem. You cannot solve a dualistic problem by being in a duality consciousness. Because you always think that the solution is out there, the problem is out there, the solution is out there, and it invariably involves forcing or killing other people.